The pediatric wing of the hospital was usually filled with laughter, chatter, and the sounds of little feet running along the hallways. Today, however, there was a quietness that felt heavier than usual. Nurses moved softly between rooms, whispering words of encouragement, and doctors exchanged worried glances. At the very end of the third floor was a small room where 8-year-old Emily lay, her body curled under the pale blue blankets. Refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Emily had been in the hospital for over a week now, battling an illness that was not life-threatening, but serious enough to keep her confined. Despite the daily visits from doctors, nurses, and even therapists, something had shifted in Emily. The bright, lively girl who used to light up every room she entered was now a shadow of herself. She barely spoke, barely ate, and hadn't smiled in days. Her world had shrunk to the 4 walls of that hospital room, and even the cheerful murals on the walls, painted with animals and balloons, failed to lift her spirits. Her mother, Lavra, sat quietly beside her, holding her hand with a gentle grip. Every time Emily let out a small whimper or wiped a tear from her cheek, Laura's heart clenched tighter. She had tried everything she could think of, telling stories, bringing Emily's favorite toys, playing her favorite songs, but nothing seemed to reach her daughter. Emily's silence felt like a wall no one could climb. The doctors were concerned. They understood the physical illness, but the emotional toll it was taking was another battle entirely. The hospital psychologist had visited twice, but found Emily closed off, unwilling to share what was on her mind. Laura feared the worst, that her daughter's heart was breaking, but no one could say why. In the corner of the room, a small photo sat on the bedside table. It was a picture of Emily with her dog, Rex, a German shepherd with warm eyes and a gentle expression. Rex had been Emily's constant companion for years, her protector and her best friend. But just weeks before Emily had been admitted to the hospital, Rex had passed away unexpectedly. The loss had been devastating for the little girl, who often talked to Rex as if he could hear her. Since Rex's passing, Emily had become withdrawn. She no longer asked about him, no longer mentioned him. It was as if she was trying to forget a pain too deep to carry. The doctors suspected that this grief was tied to the sudden silence and sadness that had taken hold of Emily. Despite the efforts of the hospital staff, Emily's mood showed no sign of improving. The days blurred together, machines beeped softly. Medicines were administered, and the sun rose and set outside the window. Lavra found herself staying at the hospital almost constantly, afraid to leave Emily alone in the room that had become so quiet, so empty. One rainy afternoon, as the gray clouds pressed against the window, a knock sounded at the door. Lavra looked up, hoping for a distraction, anything to break the silence. A nurse smiled and said, "We have a visitor today. It's from the therapy dog program. Would Emily like to meet Max?" Lavra hesitated. She had heard of therapy dogs before, trained animals who visited hospitals to comfort patients, but Emily hadn't shown interest in anyone or anything lately. Still, she nodded. "Yes, please. Maybe it will help." The nurse left and soon returned, leading a large German shepherd on a leash. Max's coat was glossy black and tan, and his deep brown eyes held a calmness that seemed almost magical. He moved slowly and confidently through the hallway, his presence somehow both commanding and gentle. As Max approached the door, Laura could feel something shift in the air. The dog paused, nose twitching as if catching a scent only he could sense. The nurse gave him permission, and Max nudged the door open with his nose, stepping inside without hesitation. Emily lay still, eyes closed. Her mother's heart pounded. Would Emily even notice? Would she care? Max moved quietly to the side of the bed, sitting down and watching her with those deep, knowing eyes. For the first time in days, a tear escaped Emily's closed eyes and fell onto her pillow. And in that silent hospital room, something changed. The hospital's pediatric wing was used to visits from therapy dogs, fluffy golden retrievers, cheerful Labradors, even tiny poodles that pranced happily down the corridors. Most of the children lit up at the sight of their wagging tails and friendly eyes. But Max, the German shepherd who had quietly entered Emily's room that rainy afternoon, was different. Sarah, Max's handler, had worked with therapy animals for years. She knew every dog had its own way of connecting with people, but Max had something special. He wasn't just trained to sit or fetch. He had been a search and rescue dog, trained to sense when someone was in distress, to find people who were lost or trapped. Even after retirement, his instincts remained sharp. As Sarah guided Max down the hall toward Emily's room, she could feel him grow more focused. He moved slowly, with purpose, not distracted by the bustle of nurses, visitors, or beeping machines. It was as if something unseen was pulling him toward that door. Emily's mother, Laura, watched nervously from the bedside chair. She had noticed Emily's eyes flicker open when Max first arrived. The girl had looked exhausted, but there was a flicker of recognition when those deep brown eyes met hers. It was as though Max's presence had stirred something buried inside. Her Sarah knelt beside the bed and gently scratched behind Max's ears. "Go ahead, Max," she whispered. "Show her what you've got." Max eased closer to Emily, who still lay half-turned away. Then, slowly, the dog lowered his head and rested it softly on her outstretched hand. Emily's fingers twitched reflexively. And then, for the first time since she'd been in the hospital, she moved toward Max's fur. The moment felt fragile and sacred. No one in the room dared interrupt the silence that stretched between the girl and the dog. The nurses who had quietly gathered outside the door peered in, their faces a mix of surprise and hope. Emily's mother reached over and gently stroked Max's back. "It's okay," she said softly, her voice cracking. "You're safe." A nurse brought over a small ball, a brightly colored toy Emily had once loved. With great effort, Emily reached out and took it, her eyes never leaving Max. She rolled the ball toward him. Max nudged it back with his nose. Slowly, Emily's lips curled into the hint of a smile. Sarah smiled, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. She had seen many therapy dog visits, but none quite like this. Max seemed to know Emily's pain, not just her illness, but her grief for a lost friend. Later, Sarah would tell Laura that Max was never just a therapy dog. He was a healer, a gentle soul who had saved lives in his career, and now saved hearts. In his retirement, the connection between Emily and Max was undeniable. That day, as raindrops slid down the hospital windows, and the hum of machines filled the background, something invisible yet powerful had taken root. For Emily, Max's presence was more than comfort. It was a reminder of what she had lost, and a reason to begin looking forward again. Over the next hour, Max stayed by Emily's side, offering silent companionship. The nurses took turns quietly checking in, careful not to disturb the fragile moment. Emily even whispered a few words to Max, her voice barely audible, but full of meaning. Sarah knew this was only the beginning. Max had unlocked a door in Emily's heart, one that had been tightly shut since Rex's passing. Healing wouldn't happen overnight, but this was the first step. As the afternoon gave way to evening, Sarah clipped Max's leash back on and prepared to leave. Emily's mother squeezed her hand, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," Laura said quietly, "for bringing hope back into her life." Sarah nodded. "Max will come back tomorrow, and the day after. He won't give up on her." As they left the room, the staff exchanged hopeful smiles. For the first time in days, the silence of Emily's room felt like a promise, not an ending, but a beginning. The next morning, the hospital was alive with the usual sounds of nurses calling out and children's laughter echoing through the halls. But in Emily's room, the air still held a quiet tension. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, lost in her own thoughts. The events of the previous day lingered in her mind. The gentle touch of Max's fur, the soft weight of his head resting near her hand. It was unfamiliar, yet comforting. Emily's mother, Lavra, sat nearby, watching her daughter, with a mix of hope and concern. She wanted to believe that Max's visit had made a difference, but fear still gripped her heart. Would this newfound connection last? Could it truly break through the wall Emily had built around herself? Just as the clock struck 10, a soft knock came at the door. Emily barely turned her head, expecting another nurse or doctor. Instead, Sarah stepped inside, leading Max by his leash. His calm eyes searched the room as he moved closer to Emily's bed. Unlike the other dogs that visited the hospital, Max showed no interest in distractions or toys. He was focused, patient, and attentive. Max stopped at the foot of Emily's bed, sitting down and glancing up at her. His presence was steady, unwavering. Sarah smiled softly. "He's here for you, Emily," she said gently. "Whenever you're ready." Emily's eyes flickered toward Max, and for a brief moment, the walls she'd built seemed to crack. She reached out a trembling hand and ran, her fingers through Max's soft fur. His eyes held hers with a quiet understanding, as if he knew the pain she carried inside. As the minutes passed, something shifted. Emily slowly sat up, propping herself against the pillows. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it was enough. "Max," she said. Sarah's eyes widened with surprise. It was the first word Emily had spoken in days. Encouraged, Emily continued. She told Max about her dog, Rex, who had been her best friend and protector. She shared how much she missed him and how lonely the hospital felt without him. Max listened quietly, never interrupting, offering only his steady presence. The hospital staff, who had gathered outside the room, exchanged hopeful glances. Emily's voice was fragile but real, and it filled the space that had been so empty. For too long, Sarah reached down to scratch behind Max's ears. "You're doing great, Emily," she said. "Max is here to help." The room seemed to breathe with new life. Emily smiled softly, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. It was the first in what felt like an eternity. Days passed, and Max returned. Each morning, Emily grew stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. She began to eat more, laugh quietly at the nurses' jokes, and even ask questions about her treatment. The hospital felt less like a prison and more like a place of healing. Sarah noticed the change too. Max was more than a therapy dog. He was a beacon of hope. His gentle nature and intuitive understanding brought out the best in Emily. One afternoon, Emily surprised everyone by asking if she could take Max for a walk down the hall. Sarah agreed, and the two ventured out, drawing smiles from other patients and staff. Emily's laughter echoed in the corridors, a sound that had been missing for weeks. Her mother watched from the doorway, tears of joy streaming down her face. She whispered a quiet thank you to Max, the dog who had unlocked her daughter's heart. The hospital psychologist noted Emily's progress in her reports. She believed Max's presence had played a crucial role in breaking through Emily's emotional barriers. It was a reminder that healing wasn't just about medicine. It was about connection, love, and understanding. As Max and Emily grew closer, the bond between them became a source of inspiration for everyone around. The once silent room on the third floor was now filled with hope and light. And all it took was a dog who refused to walk away. The hospital room was quiet that morning, but unlike before, the silence carried a gentle warmth. Emily lay awake in her bed, her eyes wide open, tracing the patterns on the ceiling. The world outside the window was slowly brightening as the sun rose, but inside, something even more remarkable was beginning to unfold. Max sat quietly at the foot of her bed, his gaze fixed on her like a steady beacon. There was no urgency in his movements, just calm patience, a silent invitation that Emily was starting to accept. For days, she had resisted everything around her, including her own emotions. But now, with Max by her side, the walls she had built inside her heart began to soften. Sarah knelt down beside the bed, watching closely. She had witnessed countless therapy dog visits, but the connection between Max and Emily was something extraordinary. Max had a way of sensing the unspoken pain and loneliness that Emily carried and responding with a gentle presence that felt like a lifeline. Emily's mother, Lavra, sat nearby, her hands folded nervously in her lap. She couldn't believe the change she was seeing. Just yesterday, Emily had barely spoken, but now she was holding Max's leash and smiling softly. Slowly, Emily reached out and gently touched Max's fur. The texture was soft and warm, grounding her in the present moment. Max leaned into her touch, his eyes never leaving hers. The trust between them was palpable. Then, with surprising strength, Emily pushed herself up from the bed and sat on the edge. For the first time in weeks, she was upright, alert, and ready to engage with the world again. "I want to try something," she said quietly, her voice trembling but determined. Sarah smiled encouragingly. "Whatever you want, Emily. We're here to help." Emily looked down at Max and took a deep breath. "Can we go outside? Just for a little while." The request was simple, but it held so much meaning. To Emily, stepping beyond the hospital room was a huge leap, a sign that she was beginning to reclaim her life. Nurses quickly prepared for the short trip. Sarah clipped Max's leash, and together they carefully helped Emily to her feet. She steadied herself, holding tightly onto Max's collar as they made their way through the hallways. As they stepped into the hospital courtyard, fresh air filled Emily's lungs for the first time in days. The grass was damp with morning dew, and birds chirped in the trees. Max sniffed the air eagerly, his tail wagging slowly. Emily's smile grew wider as she walked beside him, feeling the earth beneath her feet. She reached out to pet Max again, laughing softly as he nudged her hand with his nose. Staff and patients passing by paused to watch the scene. An 8-year-old girl, once trapped in silence, now walking confidently with a gentle giant at her side. For Lavra, watching her daughter take these steps was overwhelming. She fought back tears, grateful beyond words for the dog who had sparked this change. Back inside the hospital, Emily's doctor reviewed her charts with renewed optimism. Her physical progress had improved, but the emotional healing was the true breakthrough. The bond with Max had sparked something deep within Emily, a willingness to hope, to fight, and to heal. That evening, as Emily settled into bed, Max curled up beside her, his presence a steady comfort through the night. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, Emily drifted off to sleep without tears. In the days that followed, the visits with Max became routine. Emily looked forward to their time together, the walks, the gentle nudges, the quiet companionship. Slowly but surely, her laughter returned, and with it, a spark of life that touched everyone around her. The hospital staff often remarked on the transformation, calling it nothing short of a miracle. But Sarah knew the truth. Max had simply reminded Emily of a love she thought was lost, and in doing so, he had helped her find the courage to begin again. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the hospital room's curtains, casting a warm glow over the quiet scene inside. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, Max resting calmly at her feet, his ears occasionally twitching at the distant sounds of the hospital's routine. The world outside was bustling with life, but here in this small space, a peaceful silence had settled, one that spoke louder than words. Emily's mother, Lavra, sat nearby, her eyes brimming with tears of relief and hope. She had witnessed a remarkable transformation in her daughter, over the past several days. Shift so profound it felt like watching a butterfly emerge from its cocoon. Emily's once silent room was now filled with the gentle hum of breathing, soft laughter, and whispered conversations. But the most powerful moment came without a single word. Max, sensing the change in Emily's spirit, leaned his large head gently onto her lap. She placed her hands on his fur, the warmth and softness grounding her in a way nothing else could. Her fingers traced the familiar patterns in his coat as her eyes closed, tears quietly slipping down her cheeks. Laura watched, holding her breath, knowing this moment carried more meaning than anyone could fully understand. The bond between the girl and the dog was not just comfort, it was a lifeline. A bridge between loss and hope. The room fell silent as Emily leaned her head toward Max, her sobs quiet but genuine. The usual hospital noises, the beeping monitors, distant footsteps, and murmured voices faded into the background. All that mattered was the connection in that small room. Sarah, the dog's handler, stepped back to give them space, her heart swelling with pride and emotion. She had seen Max work miracles before, but never anything quite like this. The depth of Emily's pain was matched only by the depth of Max's empathy. It was a silent conversation, one that words could never capture. As Emily's sobs slowly subsided, she opened her eyes and looked directly into Max's. In that gaze was a spark of something long missing: trust, comfort, and a hint of hope. Max responded by wagging his tail gently, as if to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." Emily's mother reached over and gently wiped the tears from her daughter's face. For the first time in weeks, she saw a genuine smile, small but unmistakable. The nurses outside the door, who had been quietly observing, exchanged looks of awe. They had seen countless stories of healing, but few as touching as this. The power of a dog's presence, the resilience of a child's heart combined. They created a moment of pure magic. Later that evening, Emily spoke to her mother about Rex, her late dog. She shared memories she hadn't voiced before the games. They played, the walks in the park, and the comfort he gave her during difficult times. Talking aloud was new and difficult, but Max's presence gave her the courage to open up. Lavra felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For so long, she had carried the burden of watching her daughter suffer in silence. Now, with Max by their side, healing was no longer a distant hope, it was becoming a reality. The hospital staff continued to monitor Emily's progress, noting improvements not just in her physical health, but in her emotional well-being. The visits from Max were becoming a vital part of her recovery, a beacon of light on even the darkest days. As night fell and the ward grew quiet, Emily drifted to sleep with Max curled protectively at her side. The silence in the room was no longer heavy. It was filled with peace and promise. In that quiet moment, it was clear that sometimes words aren't needed. Sometimes the deepest healing happens in the silent language of love and companionship. And in Emily's room, that silence said everything. The following morning, the hospital was buzzing with its usual routine: doctors checking charts, nurses administering medications, and visitors moving quietly through the halls. But inside Emily's room, the atmosphere was different. It was lighter, warmer, and filled with a quiet sense of hope. Emily sat near the window, her eyes tracing the patterns of sunlight dancing on the floor. Max lay beside her, his head resting gently on her lap. The bond between them had deepened over the past week, growing stronger with each visit. Emily had come a long way from the withdrawn, silent girl who first arrived at the hospital. Yet, the reason for her pain remained a mystery to many, locked behind the tears and silence that had once consumed her. One afternoon, Laura sat with Sarah and Dr. Patel, the hospital psychologist, in a small conference room just down the hall. Laura's voice trembled slightly as she began to share the story she had held inside for so long. Before Emily got sick, Lavra explained, We lost our family dog, Rex. He was more than just a pet. He was her best friend, her protector, her constant companion. They had been inseparable since she was a toddler. Sarah listened attentively, her eyes soft with understanding. That must have been very hard for Emily. Lavra nodded, tears welling up. It was. She didn't just lose a dog. She lost a part of her world. After Rex passed, Emily stopped talking about him. She stopped smiling. And when her illness started, it was like everything just fell apart. Dr. Patel added gently, "Grief can have a powerful effect on children, sometimes more than adults realize. It's not just about sadness, it's a deep sense of loss that can impact every part of their life." Sarah leaned forward. Max seemed to recognize that. I think he reminded Emily of Rex in some way, not just because they're both German shepherds, but because Max has a way of connecting with the heart. Lavra smiled faintly. When Max first came into her room, Emily's eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen since Rex was alive. It was like she remembered something important. Dr. Patel nodded. That kind of connection can open doors in the healing process. It allows the child to start feeling safe again, to trust. Lavra took a deep breath. I think Max helped her find a way to grieve, to remember Rex without shutting down. That's why she started talking again, laughing even. It was like she was healing from two wounds, her illness and her heartbreak. Sarah reached out and squeezed Laura's hand. That's the kind of impact therapy dogs can have. They don't just comfort, they help people reconnect with emotions that have been buried. Back in Emily's room, the little girl was drawing pictures of Rex and Max playing together. Her laughter filled the space, bright and clear. Max sat beside her, watching with gentle eyes. Lyra watched her daughter and felt a warmth she hadn't felt in weeks. The pain was still there, but it was no longer a heavy weight. Instead, it was a part of Emily's story, a chapter that could now be faced with courage and hope. That evening, as the sun set and the hospital quieted down, Emily whispered a thank you to Max. The dog, sensing her gratitude, nuzzled her hand softly. In that moment, it was clear. Sometimes healing comes not just from medicine, but from the love and understanding of those who walk beside us, whether they have two legs or four. And for Emily, that love had come in the form of a loyal German shepherd named Max. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Emily's world grew brighter. The walls of the hospital room, once a place of sorrow and silence, were now filled with light, laughter, and hope. Max's presence had become a steady comfort more than a therapy dog. He was Emily's friend, her protector, and a gentle reminder of love, she thought. She had lost. Emily woke up each morning eager to see Max. The simple joy of greeting him with a smile and a gentle pat on the head became a highlight of her days. She began to talk more, not just to Max, but to her mother, nurses, and even the doctors. Each word was a small victory, each sentence a step toward reclaiming the life that illness had threatened to steal away. Her appetite improved too. Meals that were once left untouched were now eaten with care. Nurses noted the change with delight, encouraging Emily to keep up the good progress. Physical therapy sessions became easier as Emily's strength returned, fueled by the renewed spark. In her spirit, Lara watched all of this unfold with a heart full of gratitude and awe. She often found herself quietly thanking Max, the dog who had transformed her daughter's world with nothing more than his gentle eyes and patient presence. Sarah, Max's handler, noticed the growing bond too. It's amazing to see how much progress Emily has made, she said one afternoon, sitting beside Lavra in the hospital's waiting area. Max has a unique way of connecting with children who feel broken or lost. He helps them remember what it means to trust and hope. Lavra smiled. I think Max helped Emily find her voice again. She's not just healing physically, but emotionally too. It's like he unlocked something inside her heart. The hospital staff began to share Emily's story with other families, hoping to inspire and encourage. Many requested visits from Max, eager to experience the same kind of comfort and connection. But for Emily, Max was more than a visitor. He was a lifeline. One afternoon, Emily surprised everyone by asking if she could help Sarah with Max's care. She wanted to learn how to brush his fur, understand his training, and spend more time with him outside their usual visits. Sarah happily welcomed her interest, and the two quickly formed a special friendship. Emily's laughter became a common sound in the hospital halls. She played with other children, joined group activities, and even volunteered to read stories during therapy sessions. The shy, withdrawn girl who had once been trapped by grief and illness was now a shining light. Laura's hope for the future grew stronger with each passing day. She knew Emily still had challenges ahead, but with Max by her side and the support of the hospital staff, she was ready to face them. Max, ever loyal, remained a steady presence. He was there for every milestone, every step forward, every smile, every whispered word. His calming nature reminded Emily that she was never alone. The hospital had become more than a place of treatment. It was a place of healing in every sense of the word. And for Emily, that healing had truly begun again. The day Emily was discharged from the hospital arrived with a mixture of excitement and bittersweet emotion. The small room that had been her world for so long, the place where she had faced pain, fear, and loneliness, now felt like a chapter closing on a remarkable journey. She was ready to go home, to return to the life that had paused during her illness. Max was there, waiting patiently by the hospital entrance. His dark eyes met Emily's as she approached, a silent greeting full of love and understanding. Sarah stood beside him, smiling softly, knowing this goodbye was both an ending and a new beginning. Emily knelt down, wrapping her arms around Max's neck in a tight hug. Max responded with a gentle lick on her cheek, his tail wagging slowly, as if to say, "I'll always be here." Emily whispered something only Max could hear, a secret promise between two kindred spirits. Lavra watched, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the transformation she had witnessed. From the silent, withdrawn girl who first arrived, Emily had blossomed into a vibrant child full of hope and joy. The journey had been difficult, but with Max's help, her daughter had found strength she didn't know she had. As they prepared to leave, Sarah handed Emily a small collar tag engraved with Max's name and a paw print. "So you can remember him always," Sarah said gently. Emily clutched the tag to her chest, a treasure symbolizing their special bond. Back at home, Emily's world was different now. The house felt brighter, filled with laughter and light. Though Rex, her beloved dog, was no longer there, Max's visits had opened a door to healing and love that would never close. Inspired by their experience, Lavra and Emily's father decided to get involved with the hospital's therapy dog program. They wanted to give back, to help other families find the same comfort and hope they had discovered. It was their way of turning pain into purpose. Meanwhile, Max continued his visits to the hospital, quietly changing lives one child at a time. His calm presence and deep understanding brought comfort to many who needed it most. And though he never sought the spotlight, his impact was undeniable. Emily often thought of Max and the silent moments they had shared, the locked eyes, the gentle touches, the unspoken conversations. She knew that healing wasn't always loud or fast. Sometimes it came in quiet companionship and the simple gift of being understood. As the sun set on that final day, Emily looked out her bedroom window, clutching Max's tag and smiling. The future was bright, filled with possibilities and promise. And somewhere, in a hospital far away, a loyal German shepherd rested peacefully, ready to continue his mission of healing hearts one silent room at a time.